At my birthday dinner, my daughter-in-law stood up and lifted her wine glass, smiling as if she wanted to make a heartfelt toast. "Let's all raise a glass to Mom," she began, her tone sugary sweet. "The freeloader of the family, living in this beautiful house without paying a single bill." The table went silent for a heartbeat. Then came the nervous laughter, sharp, awkward, echoing against the walls I paid for. My son looked down at his plate. My hands trembled under the tablecloth, but my face stayed calm. I should probably explain how I ended up here. The restaurant was my choice. Bellamy's, the kind of place with white tablecloths and waiters who move like ghosts. I'd reserved the private dining room weeks ago, sent out invitations on cream-colored cardstock, even selected the wine pairings myself. 60 years old deserved something elegant, I thought, something memorable. I got memorable, all right, just not the kind I'd imagined. 15 people filled the long table, family mostly, a few close friends I'd known since my son Bryce was in diapers. My best friend Delilah sat to my left, my anchor for over 30 years, wearing the jade earrings I'd given her last Christmas. She'd arrived early, squeezed my hand, told me I looked radiant in the navy dress I'd agonized over for days. My son Bryce sat across from me with his wife Sienna beside him, her hair styled in those perfect beach waves that take 2 hours and 3 products to achieve. She'd posted 4 photos before the appetizers even arrived. The centerpiece, the champagne flutes, her manicured hand resting artfully on the white linen. Not a single one included me. I'd been watching them all evening. The way Sienna touched Bryce's arm when she laughed, her fingertips lingering just a second too long. The way he leaned into her orbit, like she was the sun and he'd forgotten there were other planets. The way neither of them looked at me unless I spoke first. And even then, their eyes would slide away within seconds, already searching for something more interesting. I'd been feeling it for months, this slow erasure. Phone calls that went unreturned for 3, 4, 5 days. Sunday dinners that became, "We're just so busy, Mom, maybe next week." The sense that I was becoming an inconvenience, a relic from a life they were outgrowing. But I told myself I was being paranoid, oversensitive, needy. The things we tell ourselves when the truth is too painful to name. Until Sienna stood up. She was radiant when she wanted to be. That's what made her dangerous. She could light up a room, make you feel chosen, seen, special. I'd fallen for it once, 5 years ago, when Bryce brought her home for Thanksgiving and she called me Mom on the second visit when she cried into my shoulder and said she'd never had a real family before, that I was the mother she'd always dreamed of. I believed every word. God help me, I believed her. The wine glass caught the chandelier light as she raised it. Crystal. Expensive. From the set I'd bought them for their 3rd anniversary. "The freeloader of the family," she announced, her smile never wavering, her voice carrying across the room like a blade wrapped in silk. "Living in this beautiful house without paying a single bill." I felt Delilah's grip tighten on my hand under the table. Her nails dug into my palm, a silent scream. But I didn't react. Not outwardly. I'd spent 60 years perfecting the art of stillness, of swallowing pain until it dissolved in my stomach like poison. My face remained serene, neutral, pleasant, even as something inside me cracked like ice on a frozen lake. The laughter came in waves. Uncomfortable. Performative. Cousin Diane giggled nervously into her napkin. Bryce's college roommate cleared his throat and studied the ceiling. Someone muttered, "Oh, Sienna," in that peculiar tone people use when they want to acknowledge the wound without condemning the knife. But no one defended me. Not one person at that table stood up and said, "That's enough." Bryce said nothing. My son, the boy I raised to be kind, to be loyal, to protect the people who love him, stared at his plate like the secrets of the universe were written in the herb-crusted salmon. His jaw was tight. His hands were folded. His silence was a betrayal louder than any words. I raised my son to protect the people who love him. That night, I learned he'd forgotten how. Sienna wasn't finished. She never was. "I mean, we all know Mom's always been good at expectations," she continued, tilting her head with that practiced innocence. "Always around, always needing a little something. But hey, that's what family's for, right? Taking care of the ones who can't take care of themselves. The room had shifted from uncomfortable to mortified. I could feel their pity like a weight pressing down on my shoulders. But I smiled. I actually smiled. "Excuse me," I said quietly, my voice steady as stone. "I need to powder my nose." I walked to the restroom with my head high and my spine straight, my heels clicking against marble floors that suddenly felt like a funeral march. The bathroom was mercifully empty. I locked myself in the furthest stall, pressed my back against the cold tile, and let the tears come. Silent, wrenching, the kind of crying that empties you out. But when I looked at myself in the mirror, something had changed. I washed my face, reapplied my lipstick with steady hands, and I made a decision. No more. I returned to the table, sat down, and finished my meal in silence. When dessert was cleared, I stood, thanked everyone for coming, and kissed my son on the cheek. His skin was cold, so was mine. I went home alone, poured myself a glass of wine, and opened my laptop. By morning, everything would change. I drove home in silence. No radio, no tears, just the hum of the engine and the weight of humiliation settling into my bones like arthritis. I parked in my driveway and sat there in the dark for an hour, maybe more, watching the neighbor's porch light flicker on and off. I couldn't bring myself to go inside yet. Inside meant mirrors. Inside meant facing what had just happened. When I finally walked through my front door, I didn't turn on the lights. I went straight to my study, opened my laptop, and let the blue glow illuminate my face like an interrogation lamp. I knew what I needed to see. I'd been avoiding it for months, maybe years, but tonight, there was no more avoiding anything. I pulled up my bank statements, every single one going back 5 years. And there they were, lined up like soldiers in formation. Monthly transfers to Bryce and Sienna's joint account, $3,000 every month, without fail, rain or shine, whether they called me or not, whether they visited or not, whether they remembered my birthday or not. I did the math 3 times because I didn't want to believe it. $180,000 in cash gifts alone, not loans, not investments, gifts. Money I transferred because Sienna said they were struggling, because Bryce said they needed help with groceries, because I believed that helping your children was what good mothers did. The evidence doesn't lie. Neither does memory. But the cash was only part of it. I opened another folder on my desktop, the one labeled Property Documents. The house deed sat there in PDF format, official and undeniable. Property address, 428 Elm Ridge Drive. Owner, Lorraine Marie Hartwell. Purchase date, June 15, 2020. Purchase price, $420,000. Paid in full. I stared at that document for a long time. The house was still in my name. I'd never transferred ownership. I'd meant to, eventually. Bryce had asked me to put it in their names when the time was right, and I'd said, yes, of course, sweetheart, when you're more settled. But the time never seemed right, and then I forgot. Or maybe I didn't forget. Maybe some part of me always knew. The flashback hit me like a wave. The day we closed on the house, Sienna had been 8 months pregnant, glowing and grateful, tears streaming down her face as we stood in the empty living room. She'd thrown her arms around me and whispered, "You're the best mom ever. I'll never forget this. Never." She'd looked at Bryce and said, "We're so lucky. We're so blessed." And I'd believed her. God, I'd believed every word. I opened Instagram on my phone. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to see the full picture. Maybe I needed the rage to burn hotter. Sienna's profile appeared, immaculate and curated. 2,000 followers. Every photo filtered to perfection. I scrolled. The designer handbag she'd bought last month, casually placed on their marble countertop. Caption, treating myself. You work hard, you play hard. The Aruba vacation from February, her and Bryce on a white sand beach. Caption, we worked so hard for this getaway, so grateful. The kitchen remodel from last fall, gleaming subway tiles and brass fixtures. Caption, finally got our dream kitchen. Blessed and grateful for everything we've built together. We. Not me. We. I kept scrolling, searching for something. Anything. A single mention of me, a single photo, even just a tagged post on Mother's Day. But there was nothing. I'd been erased, deleted from her story like I never existed, like the house had materialized from thin air, like the money had fallen from heaven. She deleted me from her story. So I decided to delete her from mine. My phone buzzed. Delilah's name lit up the screen. I answered on the second ring. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice tight with worry. "I wanted to follow you home, but I thought you might need space." "I'm fine," I said. And I meant it. For the first time in hours, I actually meant it. Lorraine, what she did tonight was unforgivable. I know. What are you going to do? I looked at the laptop screen, at the numbers glowing in the darkness, at the deed with my name on it, at the Instagram posts with their lies wrapped in hashtags. "I need to see Preston in the morning," I said calmly. "Can you come with me?" There was a pause. Then, "What time?" 8 a.m. "I'll be there." We said goodnight. I closed the laptop and sat in the darkness for a while longer. The house was quiet, too quiet. I thought about calling Bryce, demanding an explanation, an apology, something. But what would be the point? He'd had his chance to speak tonight. He'd chosen silence. I stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the neighborhood I'd lived in for 30 years. The streets I'd walked, pushing Bryce's stroller, the parks where I'd taught him to ride a bike, the life I'd built before Sienna arrived and rewrote the narrative. "You wanted independence, sweetheart," I whispered to my reflection in the glass. "Let's see how it fits." I went to bed that night and slept better than I had in months. Preston Walsh's office opened at 7:30, but I was there at 7, waiting in my car with 2 coffees and a leather folder containing every document I'd printed at 3 in the morning. Delilah pulled up 5 minutes later, her face set in that expression she wore when she meant business. We didn't need to talk. She knew why we were here. At precisely 8 a.m., Preston unlocked the door. He was in his mid-50s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, the kind of man who notices everything and forgets nothing. He'd been my financial advisor for over a decade. He'd helped me plan my retirement, invest my late husband's life insurance, build the nest egg I'd thought would secure my future. He took one look at my face and said, "Come in." His office smelled like leather and old books. I sat across from his desk, back straight, hands folded, voice steady. "I need you to pull up my complete financial history with my son," I said. "Every transfer, every gift, every payment. Going back 5 years. Preston didn't ask questions. He turned to his computer, and his fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. Numbers filled the screen. Dates, amounts, a timeline of my generosity laid bare in black and white. "Monthly transfers," he said quietly, scrolling down. $3,000, consistent for 60 months. That's $180,000. He clicked another file. Plus the house purchase in June 2020. $420,000, paid in full from your savings. He looked up at me. "Lorraine, you've given them over $500,000. Hearing him say it out loud made it real in a way the late-night calculations hadn't. Over $500,000. More than some people earned in a decade. More than I'd spent on myself in my entire adult life. "Can I stop the transfers?" I asked. "Today?" Preston leaned back in his chair. "It's your money. Always has been." "And the house?" He pulled up another file. "The deed is solely in your name. You never transferred ownership. Legally, you're the property owner. They're occupying it with your permission, which can be revoked." Delilah squeezed my hand. I could feel her pride radiating through her palm. The flashback came unbidden. Bryce, standing in my kitchen 3 months after they'd moved in, promising he'd pay me back when they were more stable. "Just give us time, Mom. Sienna's starting her business. I'm up for that promotion. We'll pay you back for everything. 5 years ago. 5 years of waiting for stability that never came. 5 years of promises that dissolved like sugar in rain." Are you sure about this? Preston asked, his voice gentle. This is your son. I met his eyes. I've never been more sure of anything. He nodded once. I'll need authorization to cancel the automatic transfer. I signed the form without hesitation. My handwriting was steady, clear, decisive. It'll take effect immediately, Preston said. The next scheduled transfer on the 1st of the month won't process. Good. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I prefer mine at exactly 180 degrees. The temperature of truth. By noon, I was back home. I made tea, Earl Grey with honey, and carried it to my sunroom. The cup warmed my hands. Steam rose in delicate spirals. I sat in my favorite chair and waited. I knew the call would come eventually, maybe not today, maybe not this week. But it would come. I thought about Sienna's face at the dinner last night. The confidence, the cruelty wrapped in humor, the absolute certainty that she could say anything, do anything, and face no consequences. She'd spent 5 years believing I was weak, believing my kindness was spinelessness, believing she could erase me from their story and I'd simply fade away like morning fog. She was wrong. I wasn't acting out of rage. Rage is hot and messy and uncontrolled. What I felt was something colder, sharper, more precise. Clarity, the kind that comes when you finally stop lying to yourself about who people really are. The tea cooled in my hands. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows. My phone sat silent on the table beside me. And I waited. Because the thing about pulling financial support isn't the action itself. It's the waiting. It's knowing that somewhere across town in the house I bought them, life is continuing as normal. For now. Sienna is probably posting another Instagram story. Bryce is probably at work, oblivious. And neither of them knows that the safety net they've been jumping on for 5 years just disappeared. The bomb doesn't go off when you plant it. It goes off when someone trips the wire. I sipped my tea and smiled. 4 days passed, then 5, then 6. Not a single call, not a single text, nothing. I went about my life as if the world hadn't shifted beneath my feet. I watered my garden, deadheading the roses that had started to brown at the edges. I had lunch with Delilah at that little bistro on Market Street where they know to bring me chamomile tea without asking. I reorganized my closet, donating clothes I hadn't worn in years to the women's shelter downtown, bags and bags of expensive fabric that had hung unworn, while I sent money to people who couldn't be bothered to call. I slept through the night for the first time in months, dreamless and deep, my body finally releasing tension it had been holding like a fist. And every morning, I checked my phone expecting to see Bryce's name on the screen, some acknowledgement of what had happened at the dinner, some attempt at an apology. But there was only silence. The silence told me everything I needed to know. I wondered, during those long, quiet days, if they'd even noticed yet. $3,000 is a lot of money to most people, but to them? Maybe it was just another line item they'd stopped tracking. Maybe Sienna assumed it would always be there, like gravity or air, one of those invisible forces that kept their world spinning. Maybe they'd built their entire budget around my generosity and wouldn't realize it was gone until the bills came due, until the credit card statement arrived and there wasn't enough in the account to cover the minimum payment. Or maybe they had noticed and were too embarrassed to call, too proud, too guilty, too busy crafting the perfect explanation that would make this all my fault somehow. I preferred to think it was the former. At least that had the dignity of ignorance. Delilah came over on day 4 with a bottle of Pinot Noir and Thai takeout in plastic containers that steamed when she opened them. We sat in my kitchen, the one I'd remodeled 10 years ago with money I'd earned myself, money I'd saved carefully from my late husband's life insurance and my own decades of work, and she studied my face like she was looking for cracks in porcelain. "How are you holding up?" she asked, pouring wine into glasses that caught the evening light and turned it gold. "I'm perfect," I said, and I meant it. There was a lightness in my chest I hadn't felt in years, like I'd been holding my breath underwater for so long I'd forgotten what oxygen felt like, and now I was finally surfacing. She raised an eyebrow, the left one, the one that always telegraphed her skepticism. Perfect is a strong word. I know what I said. We ate pad thai with chopsticks and talked about her daughter's wedding plans, about the book club meeting next Tuesday, where we'd be discussing a novel none of us had finished, about the new coffee shop that had opened on Fifth Avenue with the overpriced lattes and uncomfortable chairs. Everything except Bryce and Sienna. But the unspoken words hung between us like smoke, visible but untouchable. She wanted to ask if I had regrets, if I was going to change my mind, if I was scared of losing my son forever. I could see the questions forming behind her eyes, held back only by her loyalty and her own sense of what I needed to hear. I wasn't scared. That was the strange part. I'd already lost him. I'd lost him the moment he looked down at his plate and said nothing while his wife called me a freeloader in front of 15 people. The rest was just paperwork, just the administrative cleanup of a relationship that had been dying for years, and I'd been too afraid to pronounce dead. On day 5, my phone finally rang. I was in the sunroom, reading a novel I'd bought 3 months ago and never opened. Something about a woman who disappeared, and the husband who may or may not have killed her. The name on the screen made my heart stutter for just a moment before I controlled it. Bryce. I let it ring twice before answering. Control, I'd learned, is about timing. "Hi, sweetheart," I said, my voice warm and even, practiced. "Mom." His voice was tight, strained. The voice of someone who'd been dreading this call but couldn't avoid it any longer. "Hey, there's been some kind of bank error." I marked my page with the ribbon bookmark and set the book down on the table beside me, taking my time. What kind of error? The transfer didn't go through this month. The $3,000. It's not in our account. Can you check your end? Maybe it's stuck in processing or something? Sometimes these things take a few extra days, right? He didn't call to check on me. He called to check on his bank account. I picked up my teacup, cold now, the Earl Grey bitter and forgotten, and took a small sip just to give myself something to do with my hands. Let the silence stretch, let him sit in it, let him feel even a fraction of the discomfort I'd felt sitting at that table while his wife tore me apart and he said nothing. "There's no error, sweetheart," I said finally, calmly, like I was commenting on the weather. I stopped the payments. The silence that followed was the kind that has physical weight, the kind that presses against your eardrums and makes you aware of your own heartbeat. I could almost hear him recalibrating on the other end, his brain trying to process information that didn't fit the narrative he'd constructed, searching for words that wouldn't come. "What?" His voice cracked like ice. "What do you mean you stopped them?" "I mean, I canceled the automatic transfer. It won't be coming anymore." "But why?" "Mom, we need that money. You know we need it. We've been counting on it." Something in me hardened to diamond. Need. They needed it. Not wanted, not appreciated, needed. As if my money had become as essential as oxygen. As if I owed them my income for the rest of my life, as if my purpose was to fund their lifestyle while they erased me from their story. "Because freeloaders don't fund other people's lives," I said, my voice steady as stone. The words landed like a slap. I heard his sharp intake of breath, the small wounded sound he used to make as a child when he fell and scraped his knee. "Mom, Sienna didn't mean..." She was drunk, she was joking, you know how she gets. "She wasn't joking, Bryce, and you know it. What I don't understand is why you said nothing. You sat there. You looked at your plate like it held the secrets of the universe, and you let her humiliate me in front of everyone I love. I'm sorry. God, Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't know what to say. I froze. You should have said something. Anything. You should have told her to stop. You should have defended me. But you chose her, so now you get to live with that choice. Please don't do this. We can talk about this. We can work this out. We can fix this." Could we? Could you fix 5 years of taking without gratitude? Could you fix a son who'd forgotten his mother was human, who'd stopped seeing her as anything more than a convenient source of money? Could you fix a daughter-in-law who saw me as nothing more than an ATM with a pulse and a heartbeat? We'll talk soon, I said quietly. I promise. But right now, I need you to understand something. I am not a freeloader. I am not an obligation. I am not your backup plan or your safety net or your retirement fund. I'm your mother, and I'm done being treated like I'm invisible. Mom, please. Goodbye, Bryce. I ended the call before he could say anything else, before the tears in his voice could weaken my resolve, before I could fall back into the old pattern of smoothing things over, of apologizing for being hurt, of making myself smaller so everyone else could be comfortable. My phone buzzed immediately against the table. A text, "Mom, please call me back, we need to talk about this." Then another, "I love you, I'm sorry, please." Then another, "Sienna wants to apologize." I turned the phone face down and picked up my book. My hands were shaking, but my heart was calm. Mitchell Calloway's office was in one of those old brick buildings downtown, the kind with crown molding and windows that actually opened, where you could still feel the history in the walls. I'd been coming here for 15 years, ever since my husband died, and I needed someone to help me navigate the legal maze of estate planning and wills and trusts. Mitchell had guided me through the worst period of my life with patience and precision, never rushing me, never making me feel stupid for asking the same question twice. Now I needed him to guide me through something else entirely. I arrived at 8:30 on a Tuesday morning, dressed in the charcoal suit I wore to important meetings, the one that made me look serious and competent and not like a woman who could be dismissed. Professional, unshakable, not a grieving mother but a property owner with legal standing. Mitchell greeted me in his lobby, concern creasing his forehead when he saw my face. "Lorraine, when you called, you sounded—" He paused, searching for the right word. "Decided." I finished for him. That's one way to put it. "Come in." We settled into his office, all leather chairs and mahogany desk, the smell of old paper and expensive cologne hanging in the air. I placed the property deed on his desk, the one I'd printed from my files and carried folded in my purse like a weapon. "I need to reclaim my property," I said without preamble, without softening the blow. "The house at 428 Elm Ridge Drive, it's in my name. I want my son and his wife out." Mitchell picked up the deed and studied it, his reading glasses perched on his nose, his expression carefully neutral in that way lawyers have when they're processing something complicated. "This is the house you bought them 5 years ago." "Yes." "And the deed was never transferred to their names." "Correct." He set the paper down carefully, aligning it with the edge of his desk blotter, and looked at me with those sharp gray eyes that had seen every kind of family drama imaginable. Divorces and custody battles and inheritance fights and property disputes. This was probably mild by his standards. "Legally, you can reclaim the property with 60 days' notice," he said. "You're the sole owner. They're occupying it with your permission, which you have every right to revoke. And if they refuse to leave? Eviction. Enforced by law. But it won't come to that. Most people leave when they realize they have no legal standing." Preston had already pulled the financial records. Now Mitchell was confirming the legal reality. The house was mine. Had always been mine. I'd just been letting them live in it, like a landlord who'd forgotten to collect rent. The flashback hit me without warning. Sienna, 5 years ago, sitting at my kitchen table with tears streaming down her face, 8 months pregnant and desperate. "We can't afford anything in a good school district, Mom. I don't know what to do. We can't raise a baby in that apartment." Bryce beside her, holding her hand, looking at me with those puppy dog eyes he'd perfected as a child. "We just need help getting started. Maybe you could co-sign, just so we can qualify for a better mortgage?" And me, already opening my checkbook, already doing the math on how much I could spare, already rewriting my own future to make room for theirs. "Don't co-sign," I'd said. "Let me buy it outright. It'll be my gift to you. My grandchild deserves a good home." Sienna had hugged me so hard I couldn't breathe. "We'll never forget this, Mom. Never. You're saving us." But they had forgotten. Completely. Totally. So thoroughly that Sienna could call me a freeloader without a trace of irony. "I need you to draft a formal notice," I told Mitchell. Termination of occupancy. 60 days to vacate. He pulled out a legal pad and started writing, his handwriting precise and efficient. This will need to be mailed certified mail, signature required. That way there's legal proof of delivery. Fine. And Lorraine? He looked up at me, his pen paused mid-sentence. They'll fight this. Your son will call, he'll beg, he'll promise things. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Bryce's phone call 5 days ago. The panic in his voice when he realized the money had stopped, the way he'd immediately tried to blame Sienna, to minimize what had happened, to make it all go away with apologies and excuses. I thought about the way he'd sat at that dinner table and watched his wife destroy me and done absolutely nothing. I'm prepared, I said. Mitchell drafted the letter while I sat there, reading over his shoulder. Legal language, cold and formal, stripping away any emotion. Notice of termination of occupancy agreement. Property located at 428 Elm Ridge Drive. Vacate premises within 60 days of receipt of this notice. Failure to comply will result in formal eviction proceedings. It was brutal in its simplicity. He slid the document across the desk. You'll need to sign here. I hesitated. Not because I was uncertain, but because I needed to feel the weight of the moment. This was it, the point of no return. Once I signed this, once it was mailed, there would be no pretending things could go back to normal. No more holidays together, no more Sunday dinners, no more pretending we were a happy family. This was the end of something, even if that something had been dying for years. I picked up the pen and signed my name. Lorraine Marie Hartwell. Clear, decisive, final. I'll have this mailed today, Mitchell said quietly. It'll reach them in 2 or 3 days. They'll call you, I said. Bryce will, or Sienna. They'll want to negotiate. What should I tell them? Tell them the deed speaks for itself. Mitchell walked me to the door, his hand briefly touching my shoulder in a gesture of support that almost broke my composure. This is hard, he said. I know it is. What's hard, I replied, is realizing you raised someone who doesn't see you as human anymore. This is just the easy part. I drove home slowly, taking the long way, past the park where I used to push Bryce on the swings, past the elementary school where I'd volunteered in his classroom every Friday, past the life we'd had before Sienna, before money became more important than love. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat in the car for a long time, staring at my house, my home, the place I'd built with my own money and my own choices. I didn't take their home. I simply stopped pretending it was ever theirs. Inside, I made tea. Earl Grey with honey. I carried it to the sunroom and sat in my favorite chair, the one that faced the garden, and I waited for the bomb to drop. 3 days after Mitchell mailed the letter, my phone rang at 7 in the morning. I was in the kitchen making coffee, the kind of dark roast that fills the whole house with its smell, when Sienna's name flashed across the screen. Not Bryce, Sienna. I stared at it for 3 rings, watching it vibrate against the granite countertop before I answered. Hello, Sienna. What the hell is this letter, Lorraine? Her voice was shrill, panicked, stripped of all the sugar-sweet pretense she usually wore like perfume. You can't just kick us out of our house. This is insane. This is illegal. I poured my coffee slowly, watching the steam rise in lazy spirals. My hand was steady. My voice was steadier. My house, Sienna. Check the deed. You'll find my name on it. Only my name. We've lived here for 5 years. 5 years, Lorraine. That makes it legally ours. You can't just take it back like some kind of... She was sputtering now, her voice climbing higher with each word. Actually, I can. And I am. I took a sip of coffee. Perfect temperature, perfect bitterness. You should probably consult with a lawyer if you don't believe me, but I'll save you the consultation fee. Adverse possession doesn't apply when the property owner has been actively supporting the occupants, which I have been, to the tune of $3,000 a month for 60 months. Would you like me to do that math for you? The silence on the other end was brief, just long enough for her to reload. This is about the birthday dinner, isn't it? You're seriously going to destroy your son's life over one stupid comment? Over a joke? A joke, I repeated, tasting the word like poison. You stood up in front of 15 people and called me a freeloader. At my own birthday dinner, in the house I paid for, with the wine I bought, while wearing a dress I'm sure I funded indirectly. That wasn't a joke, Sienna. That was cruelty. Oh my God, you are so sensitive. It was just, everyone knew I was kidding. Nobody took it seriously. I took it seriously. And clearly, you meant it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have said it. Her voice changed then, shifting from panic to anger to something calculated. I could almost hear the gears turning, the strategy forming. Fine. Fine, you want to play hardball? Bryce has a right to that house. It's his inheritance. You can't just cut your own son out of... I laughed. Actually laughed. It surprised both of us. Inheritance? Sienna, do you even know what that word means? Inheritance comes after someone dies. I'm very much alive. And that house isn't Bryce's inheritance. It was my gift. A gift I'm now taking back. You're a vindictive, bitter old woman, she hissed, the mask finally dropping completely. You've always been jealous of what Bryce and I have. You've always tried to control us with your money. And now that we're finally standing up to you, you can't handle it. The accusation was so absurd, so completely disconnected from reality, that I felt something inside me crystallize into pure, cold clarity. This woman had lived in my house, spent my money, posted photos of my generosity while crediting herself, and somehow convinced herself that she was the victim in this story. The delusion was breathtaking. Let me make something very clear, I said, my voice dropping to ice. You called me a freeloader at my own birthday dinner. In front of everyone. You mocked me, humiliated me, and suggested that I was somehow leeching off of you. You, the woman living in the house I bought. The woman whose lifestyle I've been funding for 5 years. The woman who wouldn't know financial independence if it sent her a certified letter. Which, incidentally, it just did. It was a joke. God, Lorraine, you're so... Jokes are funny, Sienna. Eviction notices are not. I hung up. The phone started ringing immediately. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. Voicemail. Again. Again. I counted 17 calls in the span of 30 minutes, each one more desperate than the last. The text started flooding in too, a cascade of increasingly unhinged messages. Threats. Bargaining. Apologies that didn't sound like apologies. Accusations. Promises that things would be different, that she'd make it right, that I was overreacting, that I was destroying a family, that I'd regret this. She begged for mercy she never showed. I gave her the same grace she gave me. None. After the 17th call, I blocked her number. One button press, clean, simple, final. It felt like closing a door that should have been locked years ago. I finished my coffee standing at the kitchen window, looking out at the garden I'd planted myself. The roses I'd pruned every spring. The life I'd built with my own 2 hands before Sienna came along and tried to rewrite the story. My phone was finally silent. The house was peaceful. And I realized something profound. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel cruel. I felt free. The mask had finally dropped, and Sienna had revealed who she always was. Not the grateful daughter-in-law who'd cried and called me the best mom ever. Not the woman who'd promised never to forget my generosity, but someone entitled, delusional, and utterly convinced that she deserved everything she'd been given without ever having to say thank you. I'd spent 5 years making excuses for her, telling myself she was young, that she didn't mean it, that she'd grow up eventually. But people don't grow into gratitude. They either have it or they don't. And Sienna had never had it. She'd had ambition and entitlement and a talent for manipulation. But gratitude, that required seeing other people as human, and I don't think she ever saw me as anything more than a resource to be exploited. My phone buzzed one more time, a text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it without reading, but curiosity won. It was from Sienna, using Bryce's phone. You'll regret this. We'll fight you. You'll never see your grandchild again. I read it twice, let the threat settle, and then deleted it. She didn't understand yet. I wasn't afraid of her anymore. I'd already lost access to my grandchild months ago, slowly, gradually, as visits became inconvenient and phone calls went unreturned. She'd been holding that relationship hostage for years. She just hadn't bothered to tell me until now. I made a second cup of coffee and called Delilah. "It's done," I said when she answered. "Sienna called. It went exactly how you'd expect. How are you feeling?" I thought about it, really thought about it. "Lighter," I said finally, like I've been carrying something heavy for years and I finally put it down. "Good. Because you deserved better than what she gave you. I know that now." We talked for an hour about nothing important. About the weather and the book club and her daughter's wedding invitations. Normal things. Easy things. The kind of conversation you have when you're not drowning anymore. When I hung up, I realized I was smiling. Bryce showed up at my door 2 days later. I saw him through the window first, sitting in his car in my driveway for almost 10 minutes before he finally got out. His shoulders were hunched, his walk was slow. When I opened the door before he could knock, I saw that his eyes were red and swollen, the kind of crying that leaves you hollowed out. "Mom?" he said, and his voice cracked on the word. I stepped aside to let him in. We stood in my entryway like strangers, the place where I used to greet him with hugs and homemade cookies when he was a child, and now we couldn't even look at each other properly. "Sienna didn't mean it," he started, the words tumbling out like he'd rehearsed them. "She was drunk. She says things she doesn't mean when she's been drinking. Please, Mom, please don't do this. We can fix this. We can make this right." I walked into the living room and sat down in the chair by the window. He followed, hovering near the couch like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to sit. "Why didn't you defend me?" I asked quietly. "At the dinner, when she called me a freeloader, when everyone was laughing. Why didn't you say anything?" He opened his mouth, closed it, looked at the floor. I didn't know what to say. I froze. I know I should have. "You should have told her to stop. You should have stood up and said, 'That's my mother, and you will not speak to her like that.' You should have done something, anything. But you just sat there. I'm sorry." Tears were running down his face now, silent and constant. "God, Mom, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I know I was wrong." I stood up and walked to my desk. I'd prepared for this moment. I pulled out the folder containing 5 years of bank statements, the property deed, the receipts for every gift and payment and transfer. I spread them across the coffee table like evidence at a trial. "Look at this," I said. "Really look at it." He sat down slowly, picking up the first statement. I watched his face as he processed the numbers. $3,000. Month after month after month. His fingers moved to the next page, and the next. "I didn't know it was this much," he whispered. $180,000 in transfers, I said, my voice cracking for the first time. "Plus the $420,000 house. I gave you over $500,000, Bryce, and you didn't even know. You didn't ask, you didn't keep track, you just took." "Mom, we were struggling, we needed—" "Everyone struggles. Everyone needs help sometimes. But most people say thank you. Most people don't call their benefactor a freeloader at her own birthday party." He was crying openly now, his hands shaking as he held the papers. "What do you want me to do? Tell me what to do and I'll do it. I'll fix this. I'll make Sienna apologize. You're really going to make us homeless?" The words came out sharp, desperate. "Your own son? Where are we supposed to go?" And there it was. The guilt trip, the manipulation, the attempt to make me the villain in a story where I'd been nothing but generous for 5 years. "I'm giving you 60 days, I said firmly. "That's more than she gave me. She gave me 1 public humiliation and 5 years of being erased from your life. 60 days is generous. But Mom—" "No. No more buts. No more excuses. No more promises that things will be different. I'm done, Bryce. I'm done being invisible. I'm done funding a life where I don't even get basic respect." He stood up, the papers falling from his hands and scattering across my carpet. "So, that's it? You're just giving up on us? On your own family?" "You gave up on me first. You just didn't notice." He stared at me for a long moment, his face a mask of pain and disbelief, and something that looked like betrayal, which was almost funny considering everything. Then he turned and walked to the door. No hug, no final plea, no apology that meant anything, just defeat. I watched him get into his car and drive away, his taillights disappearing around the corner. I stood at the window until I couldn't see him anymore, until the street was empty and dark, and then I finally let myself feel it. The grief, the loss, the terrible aching knowledge that the son I'd raised was gone, and this stranger had taken his place. The doorbell rang 10 minutes later. I knew it would be Delilah before I opened it. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug, and for the first time since all of this started, I broke down completely, sobbing into her shoulder like a child, letting out 5 years of pain and disappointment and love that had nowhere to go. "I lost my son," I said between sobs. "I lost him the night he chose her silence over my dignity." "I know, honey, I know." We sat on my couch for hours, her arm around me, saying nothing because there was nothing left to say. The house was quiet, the papers were still scattered on the floor, and somewhere across town, Bryce was going home to Sienna, choosing her again, just like he'd been choosing her all along. I gave him everything. He gave me nothing, not even the truth. I should have known Sienna would take it public. She'd built her entire life on Instagram aesthetics and carefully curated lies. Of course she'd try to control the narrative one more time. The video appeared 3 days after Bryce's visit. Delilah called me at 9 in the morning, her voice tight with controlled rage. "Don't look at social media. I'm sending you screenshots. But do not respond. Do you hear me? Let me handle this." But of course I looked. I'm only human. Sienna's face filled my phone screen, tear-stained and tragic, her hair perfectly tousled in that way that takes 30 minutes to achieve. The caption read, "When family betrays you." The video started with her dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, her voice breaking in all the right places. "I don't even know how to say this," she began, sniffling, "but my mother-in-law is evicting us. With no warning, no conversation, just a letter telling us we have 60 days to get out of our home. The home where we've raised our daughter. The home we've lived in for 5 years. She's making us homeless because of one comment I made at her birthday dinner that she took the wrong way. I apologized. I begged her to forgive me, but she won't listen. She won't even talk to us. And now my daughter is going to lose the only home she's ever known." The comments started rolling in within minutes. Hundreds of them. Thousands. What kind of monster does this to her own son? Evicting your own family over a joke? That's psychotic. "I'm so sorry you're going through this. You deserve better. Some people should never become mothers." Each comment was a knife, and Sienna had handed them out like party favors. My phone started buzzing. Friends I hadn't heard from in months, asking if it was true. Distant relatives sending concerned messages. Even my hairdresser texted, "I saw Sienna's video. Are you okay?" The humiliation she'd started at my birthday dinner had now gone viral, multiplied by social media into something uglier and more permanent. Delilah showed up at my house within the hour, laptop under her arm and fire in her eyes. "We're not letting her get away with this," she said, setting up at my kitchen table. "Preston's sending over documentation. We're going to tell the truth. All of it." "Delilah, I don't want to." "No. She made this public. She weaponized strangers against you. We're not letting her lies stand unchallenged. This ends today." Preston Walsh worked faster than I'd ever seen him move. By noon, I had a notarized document containing the complete financial history, every transfer, every payment, the property deed with my name as sole owner. 5 years of generosity documented in spreadsheets that couldn't lie. He'd even included a timeline showing that Sienna's one comment had come after 5 years of monthly support totaling over $500,000. Delilah crafted the response with surgical precision. No emotion, no anger, just facts presented calmly, clearly, irrefutably. She posted it as a comment on Sienna's video, attaching photos of the documentation. $600,000 in documented gifts over 5 years. House deed showing sole ownership never transferred. Monthly support of $3,000 for 60 months. The freeloader paid for everything. Here are the receipts. The shift was instantaneous. Like watching dominoes fall in reverse, the narrative flipped so fast it gave me whiplash. Comments started pouring in, but now they were aimed at Sienna. Wait, she called her mother-in-law a freeloader while living in a house she bought them? $600,000? And she's playing victim? The audacity to post this crying video when she's been living off someone else's money for 5 years. She deleted her mother-in-law from all her posts while spending her money. This is disgusting. I watched it unfold from my kitchen table, Delilah beside me, both of us silent. It should have felt like victory, like vindication, like justice finally served. But mostly it just felt exhausting. She weaponized shame. I simply armed myself with facts. Within 3 hours, Sienna's video was gone. Deleted. Her Instagram account went private so fast, I wondered if she'd broken her phone in the process. But the screenshots lived on, shared and reshared across platforms I didn't even know existed. The internet, it turned out, had a long memory and zero tolerance for entitled behavior caught in the act. My phone buzzed with messages from mutual friends. People who'd been at the birthday dinner, who'd laughed nervously at Sienna's joke, who'd said nothing when it mattered. Now they were apologizing. I had no idea how much you'd done for them. Sienna never mentioned you bought the house. I feel terrible for not defending you. Their apologies felt hollow, like trying to unring a bell. Where had they been when I needed them? Bryce sent one text late that evening. You didn't have to destroy her publicly. I stared at it for a long time, reading those 8 words over and over, searching for any hint that he understood what had actually happened. That Sienna had tried to destroy me publicly first, that I'd simply defended myself with the truth, that maybe, just maybe, his wife had earned every bit of the backlash she was getting. But there was nothing. Just accusation and blame, still protecting her, still choosing her, still unable or unwilling to see that she'd brought this on herself. I didn't respond. I was done explaining myself to people who never listened, done justifying my existence to a son who'd forgotten I was human, done defending decisions that any reasonable person would understand. The public humiliation Sienna tried to inflict on me had backfired completely, but my son still couldn't see it. And that told me everything I needed to know. Delilah stayed with me that night. We ordered Chinese food and watched old movies, her presence a comfort, even in silence. Around midnight, she said, "How do you feel?" I thought about it. Empty, I admitted. She tried to make me the villain, and when it didn't work, when people saw the truth, I thought I'd feel better. But I just feel tired. That's because you're grieving, Delilah said quietly. Not for what you lost, for what you never really had. She was right. The son who would have defended me, who would have seen Sienna's manipulation for what it was, who would have chosen truth over loyalty to toxicity, that son had never existed. Or maybe he had once, and I'd lost him so gradually I hadn't noticed until it was too late. I fell asleep that night on my couch, Delilah in the guest room, my phone finally silent. The truth was out there now, permanent and undeniable, but it felt less like victory and more like a